I wanted to do a quick overview of this Imacasa Machete, and this is sort of a follow-up to what I was talking about in my previous Bussy Battle Mistress review. So I changed the properties that I was dealing with, I guess you could say, fairly recently, and went from kind of a wooded area to now kind of a scrubby area. So the diameter of the pieces I was cutting got much smaller, and the support behind them also got much more flaccid, and as a result, the heavier, slower blades, which have more power cutting, did not function very well in this role, unsurprisingly, because their speed was very low. And so I wanted to get a machete that was capable of doing, some of the heavier stuff, because there's some of the heavier stuff that needs to be done, but also is capable of addressing some of the brush. So I did a bit of research and selected this in no small part because Cliff spoke very highly of Imacasa, and I believe Jeff Randall does as well, because they are the manufacturers of the blades, not the handles, of the machetes offered by Essie. So here it is. I'll put all the descriptions to it down below. And it cost about $20 all in all. Not sure what I was expecting for $20. It did arrive in a bit rougher shape than I expected. The tip came bent, as you can see here, just a random sort of little S bend. Not sure why that happened. The handle is simultaneously both quite slick and quite roughly finished. Not terribly comfortable. The pins rusted with very minimal use, and I noticed that they were rusting, and so went in and put a little something on them. And the blade, I have to admit, did not come in a state such that you would call it cutlery, at least not by any traditional definition. The apex, not just the thickness above the apex, I'm talking about the actual thickness of the apex, came thicker than the edges of spoons in my drawer. And maybe I have particularly sharp spoons, but I mean, we're talking well in excess of 1 millimeter thickness at the apex. Regrinding it, and I decided I would do it in sort of non-tool owner kind of means, just because a machete would be something you might buy and use and resharpen, something like that, in a much more primitive environment, so it's not reasonable to say, well, I'll just whip out the belt grinder, no problem, a few seconds. Regrinding it, despite the high grindability of this pretty mild, soft steel, was extremely, extremely slow, and this problem was amplified by the fact that the steel was somewhat gummy and would load stone, so like my nicer DMT plates I didn't want to use because actual steel started sticking in them. And this was a big problem actually with the Spyderco medium bench stone, which also loaded quite badly, and despite using a variety of mild abrasives and one of those green 3M manufactured scouring pens, I still have not been able to get all of the steel that it loaded into the surface, which shows up as little shiny flecks, out again. So there's that. I ended up sharpening it first, mostly on a brick, actually, which did not produce very, very sharp results. I believe this brick was both more friable and had larger, more uneven particles than the brick Cliff used in his video demonstration of the brick, because even with light pressure, it just completely was disintegrating under this. But anyway, so I did finally sharpen it. It took quite a bit of time to do, and I have to say that is, a significant disadvantage. While I don't argue that knives should necessarily come like absolutely hair-whittling sharp, coming with something vaguely resembling an actual apex on them would be useful. And I should add that while some people will argue, well, a machete doesn't actually have to be sharp, that's not how it works, cutting things was very problematic with it in that state. I did actually try to use it as boxed, and again, as I said before, it was non-functional as a piece of cutlery. That said, once I did sharpen it, and you can see most of the sharpening is in this area, and we'll get to that in just a second why. Once I did sharpen it, performance improved significantly, and now it actually cuts quite effectively, and I like it very much. I will upload a full review on this when I get the time to test it more, and again, there's some handle comfort issues, and you'll notice the handle is not even with a blade. It's proud on all sides and has splinters, so it also gives you splinters as you use it. This is something I'll also have to go in and address at some point. Or just wait until my hand absorbs all the splinters and move on with life. But for $20, it is functional, albeit I wouldn't buy one on the eve of some sort of trip or something like that, because there is significant work in it to get it into cutlery. The other thing you'll notice is it only really has, at least as I've sharpened it here, functional edge from here to here. This is because for some reason somebody actually went through and ground it on this surface here, and while it was more apparent at the time, there's a little lip here, and now this is the only real sort of apex part of it, the part that's even pretending to be apexed or apexable. And again, it's not very sharp even in this condition. I didn't get it sharp, I just got it less spoon dull, and it does function like that. Up here towards the tip, there is more sharpening work to do, which I will get to at some point. But that's sort of my overview of this, and so if you need a machete and want to pay not that much money, this is an option. I haven't, on the flip side of the coin, I realize I'm opening myself up to criticism. On the flip side of the coin, I haven't found anything about this machete which I would say is standout or exceptional or would be reason to recommend them. They're not, I mean, there's been nothing demonstrated that shows high edge retention ability, certainly nothing involving fit or finish, or any sort of overt signs of quality. I haven't seen anything to demonstrate that the heat treat is faulty. On the flip side, I haven't really seen anything to demonstrate that the heat treat is particularly good, especially given how gummy I noted the steel was in sharpening. That said, I've cut a whole bunch of unsupported branches, which apparently is something that is considered abuse if you bought, what was it? The Blackhawk from Ontario or something like that. Yeah, so that abusive stuff that the $100 survival knife couldn't take, this has managed to survive. But for people who actually are serious about cutlery and understand how it functions, I guess that's sort of, don't really know what to say about that. But that's sort of my overview, and so I hope, now that this is out, if anybody were to buy something like this, they would have some reasonable expectation of what they're getting. I should also note, I bought this from, I'll link it down in the description, one of the machete stores, called, like, the machete store or something like that. And it indicated that it didn't come with a sheath, and so I bought a spare sheath to go with it, and as it turns out, it did come with a sheath, and the spare sheath that came with it, which indicated that it would fit this machete, doesn't fit this machete, which is its own whole little thing. And I don't know how much of that was my sort of incorrect interpretation of what was on their website versus me just being stupid, but there you go. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was a useful overview. If you have a machete that you like and would recommend, post it in the description down below. I'm just sort of dipping my toes in the land of machetes. I will say I like that this one has a lot more weight up front, because it means when I encounter this scrub stuff, obviously it's it's based in a bush that's about that big around. I mean, this is like 15, maybe it's even bigger, but this is 15 plus years growth. But obviously getting to that, you hack your way through a lot of thin, light, annoying branches. So like I said, if there's anything that you like or you think is particularly good for that, go ahead and post it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear about it. Always learning. And I'll see you in the next video.